Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Like I said, today is going to be a casual hangout and chat, and I'm going to go ahead and start with one of your questions. Let me see who we have on. Hello. Right on. Okay. Anyway, I got a really interesting question the other day, and I found it very confusing that people who are spiritual or who are on a spiritual path actually think like this. So I'm not going to say who sent any of these questions. I'll let them remain anonymous. But somebody had wrote me, I've been on the spiritual path for a while and have suffered much. Is it wrong to want a better life? And I shouldn't be laughing, because what is wrong is in thinking that it's wrong to want a better life. Of course, when we are unhappy, when our life is full of obstacles or upheavals or trauma, or even if we're just in a difficult economic way of living, or whatever, a poor lifestyle, and we want our life to get better, of course we want to make our lives better. There is nothing wrong with wanting to have a better life. Now, my philosophy behind this is do no harm, do as you will. Harm none, do as you will. If you feel that your spirit is pushing you, guiding you, or motivating you toward a different type of life, by all means honor that authentic voice within you. The whole idea of the work that I do and the message that I share is to align with our higher self and align and become that authentic self. So again, if you think it's wrong to want a better life, that would be more of what I'd be concerned about. We all know what we don't want, and sometimes by knowing what we don't want, it helps move us in the direction of that which we do want, where we can flourish, where we can shine. There's no reason to sit in an unhappy situation, an unhappy home, an unhappy job, an unhappy, I don't know, weight. If you're too skinny or too fat and it makes you unhappy, then change it. If you don't like your job, then change it. If you don't like the people that you're hanging around, change it. I believe in authenticity, and I also believe that it is our soul's purpose to find happiness and to live in happiness, and seeking that is absolutely okay with your spirit, I believe. Again, as long as we're not harming anyone along the way. I'm reading some of your comments here. I want to say hi to Jillian, and hi Lee and Matthew and Turjay. I see a few of you on the chat there, and I just wanted to say hi. Right on. I'm glad to hear that, Lee. Congratulations. I hope that you do develop a relationship with them and continue communicating with your guide. I think that's very important. I'm going to go ahead and move on to another question. I've only got about a dozen this month, but let's see. I love this one. I think that I am a witch. How can I tell? That's a great question. It's a very common question, and I will say, one, what is your definition of a witch? And two, I think if you are, I don't know what type of assurances you're seeking. If you're looking for, your hereditary connection, perhaps within your family lineage, were there witches in your family lineage? By all means, go to ancestry.com, find out what your lineage is. Um, I will say, for me, the definition of what a witch is very different than what other people might think it is. Of course, the word. Let's start with the word. The word wiche means wise one. I believe it's Gaelic or Anglo-Saxon, but it means wise one. So back in the day, witches before Christianity took over were seen as the healers. They were the shamans of the village. They were the herbalists. They were the ones who visited the spirit world to bring back information to the village. So they were the wise ones. How do we see? How does that definition versus what we're taught within society and media is very different. As well, witchcraft is different than the religion of witchcraft. So witchcraft is doing black magic, gray magic, white magic, shamanic magic, natural magic, elemental magic. It is the craft of the wise. It is the craft of connecting with the energies that are unseen. But as well, it is a religion to some people. For me, the religion of witchcraft is paganism, earth spirit. It is worshiping nature. So there are many definitions of what a witch is. So it really depends what type of assurance you're looking for. If you think you're a witch, most likely you are. You are. Again, I would just say that what is your definition? Does it mean you're a nature worshiper, or does it mean you're a magical practitioner? Those two are not exclusive, but sometimes as well uh, they can overlap. So I hope that answers your question. But to keep it simple, if you think you are, most likely you are, and I would probably follow your gut and look more into that. Okay, somebody is asking a question on the feed, so I'm gonna. I don't do, what do they call them, cold readings, but I will touch on this. Will the man I have feelings for? Will we end up together? There are so many variables at play. The reality of it is, you probably already know the answer. I mean, the reality is, our intuition really knows whether we're going to end up with somebody or not. Um, I find that I'm not one to believe in soul. What do they call that? You know what I'm saying? Soul partners, etc. I'm not one to believe in that. I do believe everybody comes into our lives for a specific reason. It might be for a day. It might be, a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So I would just say, whatever they're telling you, and this goes for anybody, whatever partner you're seeking, when they're speaking to you or the way they act around you, listen, listen. They're telling you by their actions. They're telling you by the way you feel around. They feel around you. I'm sorry. They feel around you. The way you feel around them might just be your ego. Might just be a fantasy within your mind. But if you look and listen to what they're telling you, when someone that you're interested in talks to you, listen, and you will know if you need to move further. If you're being rejected, or if they're not paying attention to you, don't lie to yourself. If they are paying attention to you and they seem a little bit interested, let them know you're interested. Show interest back. But by all means, don't become a stalker, and by all means, don't become codependent on them for your happiness. I feel it's very important with all relationships. And actually, this goes into the next question. Somebody wrote, and this is another wonderful question, and it goes with what we're just talking about. Is there such thing as fate or destiny? This is a very hot topic. A lot of people, especially our ego, does not like the idea that we might be on a destined path. Our ego really does not like being told what to do, especially mine. My mind is very anarchistic. You tell me to do something or I have to do something, I'm not going to do it. The same thing goes with our egos most of the time. But I will say that the debate of fate and destiny. We talk a lot about the Akashic records here on my show, and on my in my Facebook community. And for those of you that don't know what the Akashic records is, the Akashic records are a symbolic energy, thought form, idea, or concept that everything that has ever happened in the past, everything that's happening right now, and everything that's going to happen in the future is all in a book. Our entire past lives and all of our future lives are in this book, which that would kind of mean that there is some type of destiny or fate. Now, I'm going to get a little metaphysical here, so I hope you can follow along when I say this. There is fate to an extent. There is destiny to an extent. But that fate and that destiny all falls back on your past actions. You can call it karma, but I kind of see it like momentum. I kind of see it like energy momentum. Visualize, those dominoes, and people put out like thousands of dominoes and they all just keep hitting. And visualize, well, you can call it the butterfly effect. See, visualize something you did 10 years ago. It started a domino effect. Visualize something you might have done in your past life. It started a domino effect. And that domino effect is your fate, is your destiny. The momentum of energy, the momentum of karma is not going to stop just because you don't believe in fate or destiny. Now, I don't believe there's some thing or concept out there that has it all planned out for you. This is what you're going to do. You're going to be a veterinarian for the stars, or whatever. I don't believe there's something out there that's guiding our destiny. I believe we're the ones that is guiding our destiny. So in that sense, we are destined to complete our karma. We are destined to complete the fate that we have created for ourselves. The reality of it is that which you think you create, that all actions have a domino effect, a butterfly effect, if you will. It was very interesting. I think I was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and somebody asked me something similar, and it reminded me of when I understood this, when I finally grasped it. I'm not a mathematician. I don't like math. But I had to take math for my college, requirements or whatnot. And I was like, why do I got to take math? I was a philosophy major, in case you haven't figured it out. I was a philosophy major, and I was so angry I had to take math. And then one day, I'm coming home on I-95 in South Florida. The traffic is horrendous. Going north from downtown Miami up to North Miami. And it clicked. It hit me. Everything is an equation. All life, all energy is an equation. 1 plus 1 equals 2. 1A plus 2 equals 3A. Whatever the variable is going to create a specific outcome. And then I said, aha. Now I know why math is important, and now I get the idea of fate and of destiny. This plus this is going to equal that particular outcome. It doesn't have to be numbers. It could be energy and actions. When you do this along in this particular environment, this is the outcome you're going to get. And actually, there is a foundational approach I use for all magic, high magic and whatnot. So, something to think about. There is destiny to an effect. Can we change it? Of course. I firmly believe that we can change it. Good example, the tarot. When I do the tarot, I explain that what the story is telling me is exactly that. It's the variables in your life, and this is the direction the energy is going in your lifetime. But you can change it just by changing your mind, by not completing a particular action. So yeah, you can change your fate and your destiny by all means. Just one simple action can change it. So I'm missing some of the things being said on the comments the live chat. So forgive me. I saw some great dialogue going on, but uh, if you really need me to focus on it, say it again, please. um, so let me move on a little bit. Another question that I received over the last month, and this is really a confusing concept for many, many people. And actually, when I say confusing, I mean for our egos. Our egos cannot wrap our head around the idea of enlightenment. So when the question is, how do I achieve nirvana slash enlightenment? So obviously they're studying Buddhism to an extent, using that terminology. I've achieved nirvana maybe twice in my life. For those of you that don't know what nirvana is, that's the concept in Buddhism that you are one with everything that you see and feel, and you've released your ego, you've released your personality. I've achieved it twice. One during a shamanic vision quest, and once during prolonged meditation ceremony, not sleeping, not eating, fasting and sleep deprivation led me to the idea, or to the feeling. And again, it's a feeling. It is not. It's not reasonable to believe that you can function in today's world being in nirvana 24/7. For me, nirvana is an experience. It's a guide. When we achieve nirvana, let's hope it's outside of this physical body, because the physical body is full of reaction. It's full of distraction. You could be in nirvana and a thundercloud hits really hard and it snaps you back into your physical state, into your ego mind. So let's not confuse the fact that nirvana, it most likely, for me, needs to be achieved after we leave this body, when we're transitioning, hopefully between lifetimes. Now, enlightenment is a completely different term as far as I'm concerned. I don't define enlightenment and nirvana as the same thing. Enlightenment, for me, is the awakening. We talk about spiritual awakening. Enlightenment is becoming aware that we are more than our physical body. Enlightenment is a process. Uh, we've come up on a commercial break. Thank you, guys, Revolution Radio, for putting that back. We'll be right back after this break, and we'll continue our discussion. And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are the number one listener-supported radio station in the world, providing, 40 hours of programming, I believe, every week, with two stations, Studio A and Studio B. So if you'd like, please go to freedomslips.com and make a donation. We are supported by you. As well, this particular radio show and all of the work that I do is supported by you. You probably saw the little pop up here, patreon.com. If you would like to support the work that I am doing, not only online but on the ground, your support really helps me. And you can go to patreon.com/Bernard Alvarez. And depending, if you give $2 to $200, you have little gifts and rewards that I give to everybody. And plus, you have an easier connection with me. Anyway, welcome back, everybody. And we were talking about the idea of enlightenment. And I think for me, the most important thing to talk about the idea of enlightenment, or to say about the concept of enlightenment, is that it is a peeling away of who we think we are into who we truly are. Again, we had spoken about how it is understanding that we are spirit within a physical form. It is understanding that we have the egoic mind, and then we have the higher self and spiritual mind. And the enlightenment is the act. It is the awareness that we are spirit within a physical form, and doing the work and having the clarity to raise our vibration, to raise our consciousness to that of our higher self, and or source consciousness, whatever that might be. I saw a question here, or a comment that I wanted to touch on. Do you think that people accessing the Akashic records to use the information they receive to change their outcome of their future or present circumstances has an adverse effect to some of the people involved? And in that case, do you feel that people should have access to this information if knowing and changing their destiny, if you will, could potentially harm another's journey or seriously change the course of their life course for the worse? How do you perceive a person who accesses your records without your permission and taunts you with it? Is there not a code of ethics? Simply put, it all goes back to what I had said earlier, and we call it the read. Harm none, do what you will, but that also includes having the awareness of what your actions are going to perpetuate upon the people around you. If let's say you do tap into your Akashic records and you get on something that can make your life more successful, or getting the partner you want in your life, etc., etc. One, you have to ask yourself: is this for the highest good of your growth? And how is the ripple effect going to affect those around you? I do believe there is a code of ethics. My code of ethics, again, harm none, do what you will. And for those that don't follow it, there's always, I don't want to say karma, but yeah, there's always karma. There's always the rule of three: that which we send out will come back to us three times over. I've shared this story. For me, that sounds a little bit like a black magic thing. I share this story often, and I'll share it with you real quick. I was on an Amtrak train going from Miami up to Tampa, and I saw somebody wearing a pentacle, and I was like, oh, a pagan. Let me speak to them. This was like 20 years ago. Well, we're getting to know each other. We're hanging out in the bar car, having a few drinks, and we're getting to know each other. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm a Satanist." I was like, "Oh, okay. So then we're not the same. You believe in an Abrahamic religion. You're just an anti-Abrahamic religion." For those of you that don't understand, Satanism would fall under Abrahamic religion. It has nothing to do with paganism or witchcraft. But that being said, I said, "Well, what about black magic? You want to do black magic? You want to hurt other people?" And he said to me, he goes, "Oh, well, I know that my black magic is powerful. I know that it works." I'm like, "How do you know that it works?" He's like, "Well, I did a spell the other day to get back on my girlfriend, and later that afternoon I broke my arm." I was like, "What? Really? You want bad things to happen to you so you can tell that your black magic worked? I mean, what kind of mentality is that, and what kind of life is that?" So doing harm to others is only going to harm ourselves. Why bother? Anyway, I saw something here, and of course I missed it. I saw a comment here, and I want to touch on that. Dreaming. I believe it was something. Does lucid dreaming help with enlightenment and our awakening? Absolutely. I feel that a lot of the work that I do and a lot of the information that I receive is through lucid dreaming. I've learned the landscape of my dream world, sometimes good, sometimes bad. I keep going back to particular landscapes. I have one particular dream world where I have teachers, and I'm at this school with thousands of other students, and we're all outside. And there's, like, for lack of a better term, they look like Buddhist monks or something, and they address the entire gathering, the entire assembly of students, it seems like. And I get a lot of information that way. As well, I have lucid dreams of bad things, of things that I need to overcome. I'll share something very personal with you. One of my nightmares is I dream I'm living back in South Florida. No offense to South Florida or anybody that lives there, but I grew up in South Florida. My life was there. My egoic, non-awakened life was there. And it was very difficult. I had a very rough youth, very, very, very rough youth. For those of you that know my story, you can probably read more about it in my book. I think I talk about it in a little bit more detail. So for me to dream about living back there, the price, the rent, the attitude of the people, the busyness, the lack of nature, the concrete, the pollution, is a nightmare to me. But yet, it's telling me something. I don't quite know what it is yet, but it is telling me something. If anyone keeps having the same nightmare over and over, that is your subconscious or your higher self trying to bring something up to the surface that we need to overcome. So I'm still working on that. uh, by all means, if you're going through the same experience, look deep, see what it is that your subconscious or your higher self is trying to teach you, and why do you keep having that particular nightmare? Why do you keep going into that dreamscape? For those of you that want to learn more about the dream world, we do have a free webinar out there. Actually, it's on my Patreon page at patreon.com. If you just go to my Patreon page and in the search bar, type in Dream World, there's a 2 or 3 hour webinar with myself and Miriam Delicato from the Great Gathering and Blue Star Prophecy, where we cover a lot of the details of how to go into the dream world, how to lucid dream, how to retrieve information, and a lot more detail than what I can cover here in like 2 minutes. But again, go to patreon.com/Bernard Alvarez and look for Dream World. You'll really enjoy the webinar. It's really good. And of course, Miriam is an amazing source of information, of this type of information. I have to read this comment because it says the words I love, star stuff. Gina, I believe it's Gina, I hope I'm saying that right, says, we are made of star stuff. This helps explain our existence in reference to the Big Bang. And the Big Bang helps us understand our elemental makeup, but elements have consciousness to them. If the elements if these elements have personality, couldn't we say the gods and goddesses of myth are archetypes of our own makeup, the of our own make up the ingredients that individual they all represent the spirits within us, love, war, music. Trying to make the connection. Thank you for that. That's a great observation and a great comment. I firmly believe that. I believe that gods and goddesses are made in 3 different ways, and I've covered this before in some of our hangouts. And there is a video, "Who Made God?" I believe I have it up on my YouTube, or actually on my Patreon also. How is God created, or who made the gods, or something like that. But ever so quickly, I believe that they're either primordial. It's an energy that's been around, and I'll get more into that in just a moment. Or they are thought forms from people believing that rock is special. That rock is special. You got millions of people saying that rock is special. Well, that rock becomes special. It becomes a thought form. It can become a conscious entity. So, and or they are transdimensional entities, very powerful transdimensional entities, kind of like what the Hopi call the star people, and perhaps what Jesus and many of the gods were, that mythology and history has shown, these beings coming down. Maybe they're transdimensional intergalactic entities. But going back to what we were saying about the elementals and whatnot, I love the Kinetic definition of gods and goddesses. And I've had Patricia Ayan and Stephen Mailer on my show many times, and I love the way they define it. Um, I believe it was Stephen Mailer that says there are, or actually Patricia says it also, there are 360 gods and goddesses, so to speak. And actually this comes from Hakim, the wisdom keeper, Hakim Ayan. These are natural vibrations, natural forces. So just like you said, that natural frequency of water, perhaps, is a god or goddess within its own right. The same thing can be said for passion, for love, for war, for food, for birth. All of these things are natural frequencies. They're naturally occurring. The Egyptians didn't see them as, God. It was a part of nature. They were natural forces. Yes, over time they anthropomorphized them, as you see. There are images of beings with different, animal heads and whatnot, to personify these energies. But essentially, and at the foundation of it, they are merely natural frequencies that are, you know, we can't deny that there's a specific frequency to weather, there's a specific frequency to water, to earth, to love, to anger. That those natural forces are all of these gods and goddesses that we all like to refer to. Now, to take it a step further into the 21st century, I ascribe to a lot of the teachings of Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung, who talk about the collective unconsciousness and the superconsciousness. That these are all within us as well. That these frequencies are a part of our makeup, of our personality, and it's a part of each of us. So there is no separation from these gods and goddesses to the frequencies and well, I don't want to say the clarity, but our ability to attune to these frequencies and levels of consciousness. So I hope that brings it out a little bit more. Oh boy, this is going by so quick. I'm always like, oh, I hope we have enough stuff to chat about, but I'm running out of time already. We got about 10 more minutes, so um, I'm going to try to finish the questions that I promised these people that I would answer in their emails. And one of them is, how can I heal from a traumatic time in my life? I talk about this all the time. I talk about shamanic healing, shamanic soul retrieval, the belief that when something very traumatic happens to us, our soul kind of fractures and a piece of it like takes off. So I do believe that, we hold on to that hole. There's a hole within us. And it's very interesting because when I had my spiritual awakening, I remember prior to that. Now, I was only 23 or 24 when I had my shamanic vision quest, and it changed my whole life. But I will say that prior to that, I remember feeling that hole in my heart, that emptiness, and I was grasping for something to fill that hole, whether it was love or sex or drugs or socializing or social prominence and status, material. I was looking outside of myself, but I did feel that emptiness. That emptiness was probably the trauma of maybe the way I was raised. I was adopted, et cetera, et cetera. It was a tumultuous time in the country. I grew up during the 70s. It was, the Vietnam War. It was all crazy. I was only a little kid, but I remember the trauma. I remember too much, actually. Anyway, so there was this hole, and now after I had that shamanic vision quest, all of a sudden it was filled with love, it was filled with light, and I felt like I had retrieved myself and made myself whole. So, how do we heal from traumatic experiences in our life? Call it PTSS, call it shell shock, call it trauma, whatever it is. I believe the first thing we need to do is to be assertive, not to fall into the role of victim. Yes, we're allowed to cry, we're allowed to mourn our experience. We've gone through a horrible experience. Give yourself a minute or a few days or even a few weeks to mourn what has happened to you. I know some of us have had very, very traumatic experiences, whether it be the loss of a limb, the loss of a partner, physical or sexual abuse, and those are real traumatic experiences. I'm not saying not to acknowledge them, but allow ourselves, in order to heal, we have to allow ourselves to heal. And when we are stuck in that level of poor me, poor me, poor me, look at what happened to me, look at what happened to me, look at what happened to me, you're going to identify with the trauma more than you are with your life that's ahead of you. We all have a story. And I say this all the time. I probably say this every week. We all have a story. We align with a story. When you meet somebody, when you're interviewing for a job, when you're on a first date, who are you? What are you? You have a script in your mind. You have a story. And what happens is we begin to identify with that story and think that's who we are. We're not. We're not that story. We are not our past experiences. We are not our trauma. And in order to heal from trauma, we need to face the trauma and fill that broken part of us with spirit, with light, with joy. In shamanism, we call it retrieving that soul piece and bringing back that soul piece. So be proactive. Don't be reactive to healing yourself from trauma. How do I find a teacher? A great question. One that I get all the time. How do I find a spiritual teacher? People ask me to be their teacher all the time. I wish I had time to be 200 people's teacher online. This is the best I can do. But I will say this: your teachers will always be there in one form or another. The secret is to acknowledge that they are your teacher. If you are looking for a sage, a wizard, a high priestess, to be your teacher, you may not see them. They may not appear to you in that form. If you have this preconceived idea of what a teacher is, you're missing out on a whole lot of lessons. I remember when I got involved in this work, I mean, there were people that I would never consider a teacher, but now looking back, I see them as a teacher, whether it be a therapist or a cop that arrested me or, a neighbor who was going through something and I got to learn from their experience. We're constantly being taught. Now, if you're talking about metaphysics, if you're talking about magic, mysticism, exclusively, and you only want that, it's best to reach out to your community. We have communities online. I'm sure you have communities on the ground. If you don't, try Meetup. If you're looking for particular, like pagan or Wiccan teachers, go to Witchvox. As a matter of fact, I'm listed on Witchvox. I do tutoring, but I'm sorry, I have to charge for tutoring. I only have so much time on my plate here. I'm also the chairman of a nonprofit here locally, and I have to make a living. So I do charge for tutoring. If you would like me to be your tutor, you're welcome to make an appointment by all means. But as well, go to workshops. I find one of my greatest teachers, great example, was Joseph Campbell. Now, how was Joseph Campbell my teacher? He died in what, 1980, I believe? Harvard, Harvard University, had continued to play his lectures and still had college courses on Joseph Campbell's work, and they would broadcast it on local access cable. So every day at 2 o'clock, I would come home for lunch and I would watch the Joseph Campbell lectures every day for about a year. So he was one of my teachers. This was back in '91, maybe. Um, so teachers come in many different forms. Ram Dass, another one. I ate up his material. I consider him one of my teachers. He helped lay down the foundation of the work that I do by reading his books. I'd buy all, back then we had cassettes. I'm giving away my age. I'd buy all of his cassettes and all of his lectures, and it really, that to me was a teacher. It wasn't until much later, well, a little bit later, where I found one of my teachers who happened to be the landlord of the house I was living in, and I speak about it in my book actually. He discovered my altar room. I had an altar room, and he's like, "Oh, nice room you have back there." I'm like, "Oh, great, here I am." And the Bible Belt, this guy just saw my pagan altar room. He's going to kick me out. He's like, "Oh, I'm a practicing Algonquin shaman." I was like, "Yes." He had a library. We'd sit. We'd have coffee. We'd drink beer and read books. And he was a great teacher for me. So again, don't don't narrow your definition of teacher. Teachers are all around you all the time. If you want a formal teacher, I hate to say it, most of the time it's either you're going to have to pay for the tutoring and or you're going to have to join like a coven or a grove or a secret society or whatever it is. But again, teachers are everywhere. You don't need to do that. This isn't this isn't the medieval times where a wizard plucks you out and says you're going to be my apprentice. I've had apprentices in the past. It never works out. I hate to say it, it just never works out. I'm too strict as a one-on-one teacher apprentice type thing. As far as mentoring, I could do mentoring and tutoring. Anyway, let's move on. I want to see if I'm seeing anything any cool comments that I wanted to share. Yes, experience is the harshest teacher and probably the greatest teacher that we'll learn. Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Alicia. Animals I encounter are my teachers. Animals, nature, learning the patterns of nature. I forgot who it was that said it. It was a shaman, and he said, "You can learn, you can learn everything you need to learn about the universe just by watching the pattern of a bird flapping its wing." I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty deep." But I have yet to figure that out. But it was a good example that we can learn from nature. We can learn from our guides. Once I connected with my guides, they were my teachers. The emissaries of light became my teachers. My higher self is my teacher constantly. Aligning with my higher self, living proactively through my intuition teaches me quite a bit. Sometimes it's a harsh lesson, but so I would suggest, and actually, that is the way that I teach. I teach people to become their own teacher. And the method I use is to have you learn how to connect with your higher self and or with your spirit guides. It's best to become your own teacher and have that universal connection. Yeah, in the beginning, it's nice to have someone to tell you what you're doing wrong, but oh my gosh, we're out of time. Darn. Anyway, thanks, guys. This is always so much fun. Maybe we'll do it again next week. I don't have a guest book for next week, so perhaps we can go ahead and do this again. I've got so many more questions I never got to. I love you, everybody. Please, by all means, go check me out on patreon.com/Bernard Alvarez. I love you, and I'll be here on Facebook throughout the week.